Hey, what's going on, everybody? ChazmaN here. We're back once again with perhaps not a full ChatZman episode, but I don't know what things had kind of gone awry, and we decided tomorrow we're going to record our next actual episode. But I don't know, these guys figured since we had gotten
awry,
we didn't go awry. Well,
I don't know about that.
There was a topic we didn't want to leave our buddy Gamer out of. You know, we wanted his opinion on certain things.
Yeah, well, then I think we got a pretty loaded list of topics for this week. So to kind of shorten that following podcast and give us still a chance to kind of focus on some Zelda, we figured we'd kind of pull that out, focus on Zelda to kind of keep that conversation going a little bit, and then that will give us a little more leeway when we have our hopefully full podcast tomorrow.
Hopefully that one won't be a normal 2-hour one. Try and shorten that one as much as we can.
You know, when you say it's going to be shorter, that's when it's a lot longer.
Yeah.
Giggity.
Yeah.
It depends on how long Gamer talks about Diablo 4.
Hey, watch it.
So, shoot, man. Are we just
Get
riffing
Diablo
it?
talk out of here.
Are we just riffing it? How do you guys want to start? I mean, what crazy experiences have you guys had that are new, I guess, since the last time you played? Or we talked, I mean.
Well, I've spent way too much time in this game, so I've been trying to hold off finishing the game for the longest time. I've been sitting at like all the primary dungeons done. I was trying to putz around. I finally couldn't do it anymore. I was running out of quality things to do. So at this point, I've beaten the game, but I really just kind of want to dig back into our conversation of the dungeons. 'Cause I think we've all, at least so far, have talked about, you know, the world and some of like the other new introductions like the depths and things like that. We can certainly revisit some of those conversations, but we didn't really, I think, as a group, get to talk about the dungeons much. And correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like last time we talked about it, Chaz, had you even beaten the first dungeon? I feel like Serrano or Metal finally had. But
I don't think so. I think
you
I
were
was
still putzing off somewhere.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to revisit that at a bare minimum, kind of go from there.
Okay. Which one? Do you want to talk about a specific one? I mean, or just...
Well, I know me and Metal had got to talk a little bit about the
Rito,
quote-unquote first dungeon. Yeah, the Rito. I mean, I know there's no first dungeon. It's all based on the order of how you kind of approach things. But what were your opinions on the Rito dungeon, Chaz? Like, how'd you feel about it? Because I know you have probably the... what's a nice way to say this?
I'm probably the most casual Zelda
player. Yeah, you don't have quite as much in your catalog of completions and of other Zelda games. So
he's the least experienced.
Well, I'm not
comparative to other dungeons.
Well, as you were gonna say, I am also, like, as he said, the least experienced in terms of like the more intricate Zelda dungeons. So, like, I don't know. I'm typically not a huge puzzle guy, so for the most part, I didn't really see a problem with a lot of the what was it, the mystical creatures, and they're like, you know, or to you guys, the crappy little divine beast dungeony things. So to me, those weren't really like that bad until I like went on to play something like Skyward Sword, where I'm like, oh yeah, compared to this, it's like I kind of see their perspective. But so far in here, I would say if we were to compare them more to the divine beast parts from Breath of the Wild, I would say these are like, they're not like super leveled up, but they're like a level above those, if that makes any sense. I really like the Rito one. I more particularly the ship aspect of it. Well, we said we're doing spoilers, so we're not afraid to give away what happens.
We've all played the Rito, and if you guys are listening to this podcast, we probably will tread in some spoiler territory of the game. So if that is something you don't want to dive into, tread lightly. We'll try to preface things, but I think we're just kind of chatting about what we've seen, so be prepared.
I mean, go figure. You know, when you get to the end, there's like a mystical ship, and go figure, there's a big mighty creature in there that's creating the storm. That's kind of, you know, creating snow and whatever. I kind of liked that battle aspect, the end part, but I would say the part I enjoyed the most was the kind of the more flying, the aerial aspect. You know, kind of jumping along. So for me, that part was more fun than the actual. I don't know, I felt like the ship puzzles and that dungeon aspect, it was kind of simple. I think when you get to the Gerudo one, that one's a little more deep, maybe a little more interesting in terms of how it operates. But yeah, I feel like the Rito one was fun.
Yeah, well, we talked about it too last time. Like, getting to the dungeons, I feel like in this game,
that's
is
more
a step above what the last game did. Like whatever, and all of them I think do a pretty good job of this. Some better than others, but yeah, I thought, you know, the bouncing between the flying, like Viking ships was pretty cool, and they do some similar things like getting to the Gerudo dungeon and stuff like that. Somebody may remind me, because I don't recall this, because this is probably the biggest issue I have with kind of all the dungeons. They all have the exact same structure. You do the same 4 things or 5 things in some instances, and then you fight the boss. Like, and that is pretty much it. Very few exceptions. Some try to jazz it up some. The Divine Beasts, like, I don't remember how the Divine Beasts are really structured. I thought they were like pseudo-puzzly, like you had to like get past one element to get to the next part of the beast, get to the next beast. I don't think they were like do A, B, C, D, be done.
I could be wrong, but didn't they have like, wasn't there like an external quest to go on before you could access it? Like, wasn't there like they would tell you to go do a quest that didn't pertain to the beast in particular, and then you would come back and then you would gain access to it or something, if I remember correctly.
In a similar aspect, it was kind of how they're doing this game, how they give you like kind of a mini quest that leads to the dungeon. They were a little different in the last game. Like, I remember you had to help out the prince in the last game, and then you'd have to like swim through to get to the elephant. So they all had some little quest line to build up to the Divine Beast. But I'm really thinking of just the beast itself. And I really just can't remember them because I kind of blocked a lot of the Divine Beasts out of my mind after I played them. But I almost feel like these dungeons, in a way, are worse than those, just because at least the Divine Beast felt kind of like you were doing a puzzle to get to a new section, to do this, kind of like you were working your way through it a little bit. That's not how almost any of these dungeons are set up. It's just, you have access to pretty much the whole dungeon, you go do the 4 or 5 things that are always the same thing. Like, it's basically like, you know, a fetch quest kind of, you know, checklist kind of thing every single time. And that's it. I feel like at least the Divine Beasts were a little different in that aspect. They weren't good, but I almost felt like that after a certain point really made me get to the point where as I saw a new dungeon, quote unquote, in this game, my anticipation was already dropped down immensely. Because I'm like, well, I know I'm going to be doing this one thing 4 or 5 times. And it already kind of set the expectations pretty low for me on any of them. So the fact that you're saying like these dungeons are better than the last dungeons in the Breath of the Wild, it's hard to say. Visually, they're much better. I think they look the part much more, and the boss battles are a lot better. But I'm still not sold on the dungeons themselves.
Well, the boss battles are more varied, at least. At least the creature at the end does like something totally different. It has a specific moveset versus it's the same creature just with different weapons or whatever it was, you know.
I agree the bosses are better, but when you think about a Zelda dungeon, like, the dungeon and the boss are kind of separate, right? You can have a great dungeon and a crappy boss, and that's true for any Zelda game. So if I'm thinking just about the structure of the dungeons themselves, man, they're not awful. I think as a whole, sure, I guess I'll say they're better than Breath of the Wild, but they have just as many issues in a different type of way. Like, I was pretty let down by them overall. The Rito one maybe wasn't so bad because it was the first one I had done. What was the next dungeon you guys did after the Rito?
I'm doing Gerudo. Well, I did Gerudo right after that.
Okay.
I did the Zora's Domain.
Okay. That was the second one I did. What do you think of the Water Temple?
It wasn't bad.
Just
to recall, because you're right about one thing. They're so cookie cutter. Every single one of them, I expected it. When I saw it in the second one, I was like, "Really? Are you serious?" And then you
kind of hold out hope after the first Rito one. You're like, well, maybe that was just the thing they were doing for that one dungeon, and the next one will be different. But no, as soon as you get to the second one, you're like, okay,
same
I see what's
thing.
going on here.
It's like, oh, come on, guys! Like, the only thing you have is a new, companion, which that's fine.
I was just gonna say,
it's not a big deal.
Are the companions a little? I don't know. Are they a little boring? I feel like. I don't know. Their ability,
they're kind of like
cool, but
to me, they're rehashed. Like those are rehashed powers from other games. Really? Like the spinning thing, that's from. Oh wait, you didn't play the Goron one yet.
It's fine.
If you played Majora's Mask, you see that. That's the same exact ability with fire. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, wait till you get there, you'll see. And
the way they're used in the dungeons aren't exactly exciting. They're all used for the exact same purpose. They are the key to unlock whatever thing you got to do. So if they are, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, it's like if you played one Zelda, you already know what to expect with every single thing that you do. Like, oh, you do this. Oh, well, you blow up rocks. Oh, you do this. Oh, you go up waterfalls. It's like, okay, we get it.
I think it's worse even than
thing.
that. Like, I mean, that's true if you played other Zelda games. Yeah, these powers on their own aren't that interesting, but even in the context of if this is the first Zelda game you've played, you do that. These powers are almost interchangeable between every single dungeon because they serve the exact same purpose in all of them. I mean, outside of the dungeons, some of these powers have more application. Like, what is it? The Rito power, where he gusts you around. That becomes like necessary. You have to use it. Other ones less so. But in the dungeons, they all are literally just the key to unlock one of 4 gates, essentially, whatever those gates may be. But sorry, what else did you want to say about the water temple?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, so I want to say I liked getting to it because one of the things that I enjoyed so far about just everything in general is that you get to see. It literally is the second game of the other game, because if you play the first one, Prince Sidon is the little kid from the other game, and it's like, oh, cool.
Well, they're all basically like that. They're all basically little kids from the previous game.
Yeah, and to me that's cool. It's like, oh, neat. You get to see them again, and you get to use them in a different capacity. The dungeon itself, though, like, it was very... I think all the dungeons are super lackluster. They're missing something, and I don't know what it is, but keeping them the same like that, not so much. Like, I thought getting to it was cool because you had to, like, swim your way up there.
Yeah.
That's kind of neat. And then the whole, like, dirty water thing, that's fine. That's cool. It almost reminds me of the poison water from Majora's. So the dungeon itself isn't terrible. It just wasn't that good. And the boss was so easy. That was really disappointing. So to me, it's like, if you're gonna have a crappy dungeon, at least have a good boss.
Yeah.
And thinking about it, it was just, no.
For me, and like you were talking about what's missing. I mean, to me, there's a couple of components. One is all of these dungeons are lacking any sense of progression through the dungeon. I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but it literally is, you have this open area, you can go any way you want, just do these 4 things in any order, but there's nothing, for very few exceptions, making you go through the dungeon in a certain order to give you some kind of progression. The combat is almost non-existent in these temples as well. You have like an enemy, and they don't ever pose a threat. It's literally like one of the little constructs.
Zonite. Yeah, constructs.
Yeah. So I think the fact there's no combat challenge, no progression, no like mini bosses, there's nothing pulling you through these dungeons. They're just kind of these open little sandbox areas. For me, the water temple was the worst one. I think because it was the easiest by all means. It felt the smallest too. I think because it was like an open air kind of temple. Like as soon as you start it, you see everything. Like the scope of the whole thing just like shrinks down immensely because you're like, well, I see where that one is. I see where that one is. I see where that one is. And then it's just a matter of just kind of making a big lap, knocking him out, and getting back. Some of the other ones do a little better job, but I think the water temple did the worst, and the boss, I think the water temple was the worst as well. So that for me was the bottom of the barrel. Like Rito's a step above that. Water is sitting down at the bottom.
Well, the thing,
like I think the waterway was more interesting than the freaking dungeon itself. Like and I thought the waterway was
all of them is better.
Yeah, like you're going through that waterway and you're like, I want that treasure chest. Where the hell do I get that? You know, like I'm using Ascend. Yeah, like you're using Ascend to try to like go to the next level to try to do whatever. Your water goes lower and stuff. It's like, all right, cool. I see what they're doing with this. This is great. I hope this dungeon does the same. Nothing. None of it. None of it.
And maybe I'm just reading it wrong. And maybe the way you're supposed to look at this is kind of put it all together. The way to the dungeon and the dungeon should be one kind of cohesive experience. But I never really feel like that. I mean, they feel like 2 completely different things. And the quote-unquote dungeon just always brings a very lackluster conclusion to that process. Because, how you get to the dungeon in just about every instance is pretty engaging for one way or the other. But the dungeon's just, man. What were you going to say, Chaz?
No, I was going to say, what do you guys... Are you more disappointed in the... I guess in the intricacy and like... Are you more disappointed in the intricacy or how in depth the dungeons are, or are you more difficult, or are you more disappointed that they're not super difficult? Like, or is it a bit of both?
You go ahead and field that one first, Metal.
I'm pretty spoiled with a lot of the Zelda like dungeons. I really like a very good fleshed out dungeon with like many places to go, and they're locked. Like you need to find your way through all these things. Like I've ran into a few like sky areas that you have to like burn your way through things. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I ran into like a Sage's Will, whatever the hell that is. I don't even know what that is yet. I just ran into
I
it.
agree
like,
with you.
hey,
I don't even know what the wisps are for yet in the underground.
Oh, the pose?
Yeah, whatever.
Oh, you gotta go. Yeah, you gotta go to. Never mind. Anyway, so yeah, you gotta go to a thing. Go back to Lookout.
Well, can I just say the reason why I wanted to ask that question in particular is because I feel like the answer for why that isn't is like, I mean, it's probably what you would think. I would think it's where the emphasis and the development time of the game is. I mean, I'm sure the open world aspects probably takes away
I disagree.
Really?
I know what you're saying there. I mean,
because they only have so much development time. I mean,
okay, I don't think this is a development time issue because for one, we didn't even know this game was coming out on a certain date till 6 months beforehand. They could have pushed this off as long as they wanted to. I mean, I think their design goals of being an open world does affect how they do the dungeons. Not the fact, though, they didn't have enough time to do something with the dungeons, because there are other areas of this game that are incredibly intricate. They spent a lot of time and kind of did the levels a certain way. They chose to make these dungeons very kind of open format for a reason. I think the primary reason probably is
you're going to go the sandbox stuff again. Yeah.
Well, not that. I mean, okay, so sandbox partially, but there's no guarantee you will tackle any one dungeon in any one way. So if they're trying to gauge things at a difficulty level, they don't want to make one dungeon far more complex than another. They want every dungeon to be as accessible as possible, which I don't love that.
It makes sense.
I feel like what's wrong, like, I don't think they should make a dungeon like impossible for anybody to get through, but what's wrong with going up to a harder dungeon early on in the game and challenging yourself to try to get through a harder dungeon? Like, nothing should be like a straight up, wall where you cannot progress. Like, you should have the skill set to accomplish whatever. But if it's a little more complicated or a little trickier, that maybe exploring the world would help you in a little more, then you have an option, right? You can either go off and explore the world and get better and come back, or fight your way through and challenge yourself. I think this the way where every dungeon is just very open level, kind of, you just go off, do these tiny small little puzzles. My bigger issue is not even so much the difficulty, but the complexity and progression. I've said that a few times, but when I think back to even dungeons in like Skyward Sword or something like that, a lot of those dungeons weren't really hard from a puzzle standpoint. Like, most of them, honestly, you spend a couple of minutes, you figure out the puzzle, but you felt like you were moving through this dungeon. It felt as intricate adventure, right? You're making your way through, conquering certain challenges, and when you get to the end, you feel like you've really accomplished something. I never felt like that on any of these dungeons. I did my grocery checklist as I was running through, and then I fought some boss, and it was done.
Something I wanted to bring up, but something that I think from the previous game that really, I guess, kind of fulfilled that thing you're talking about was the island. The island that strips away all of the stuff you had.
Oh, Eventide?
Eventide. I feel like that game, by taking everything from you, really made it feel as though you're, like, subtly progressing just by, like, starting off. You're like, oh, I just need to get a stick. You're back to square one.
It gave you a challenge, right? Yeah. And there's a lot of ways to kind of set up a challenge. Like, some of it is with a progression, some's with, a combat encounter, whatever it may be. And Eventide Island was a good example of that in the last game. And not saying that there aren't other things like that even in this game. The dungeons just aren't it. And by the way, have you guys made it to Eventide Island in this game?
Oh, I haven't. I forgot about it now.
I have it on. I have it on my map.
Does it just do the same thing? Go. It's
no, it doesn't.
Oh.
Okay, I won't spoil that one for you.
Your face says it all. It's like, I don't know, man.
It's different. I didn't think it would. I don't think it was better than what I kind of wish they would do the same thing.
Is it kind of similar to the like right now? I've been working my way through that labyrinth that's northern up in the snow.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you did that yet.
There's a bunch of
labyrinth.
I haven't done it.
There's a bunch of parts to it, but it's like I don't feel like the way they've added on to it is all that interesting, in my opinion. Kind of similar to what you're talking about with Eventide. It's like, so you added in all these different levels, but like, it's all kind of the same.
Nothing. Yeah.
And I can't even get to the last part of it because I don't have enough stamina. So it's like, I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up because it reminds me of
potions, man, elixirs, food.
Yeah. Or you get through it.
The
labyrinths are another topic, but same kind of thing. Like, there isn't much of a challenge to those, really. And I guess this is my biggest issue with a lot of them. Like, so those labyrinths, there's 4 of them. I'm pretty sure there's 4 of them.
There's 4?
Once you've done one,
I'm not doing all of them.
You get them all.
Once you've done one, though, they all are identical. There's nothing different about any of them. And I guess that's my big issue is, like, that's my issue with this game as a whole, kind of, is like, once you've experienced one example of a thing, one dungeon, one labyrinth, one whatever, you've kind of experienced everything that game has in that category. Like, there are certain examples where other dungeons might do things a little better or worse, but it's always the same type of dungeon, right? The labyrinths are straight up identical, pretty much, and there's a whole bunch of other situations like that too. Stuff inside the depths. Once you've done one, you've done them all. So I don't know, and that's true for any open world game where they're just kind of giving you a big sandbox and kind of your checklist of, hey, go in the world and do all these different things. Of course, making everything unique is, I won't say impossible, but maybe not their main focus. But you really feel it with stuff like the dungeons and labyrinths. I feel like they should be these very special things, and they don't feel that way after a certain point. I don't know. And I'm not saying that once again I haven't enjoyed the game. I put 100 hours into the game, so I've enjoyed my time with it, but I still feel there's a lot of room here to improve upon. I'm not sure if I want them to continue this particular direction, even though they said they already are.
No, you're gonna buy the next one.
Of course,
and I'll enjoy it. The core gameplay is fun.
The game is good. It's just
I just don't feel like ultimately every Zelda is gonna be this for the next 20 years.
I don't know, man.
By that prospect.
I mean, it's just like you play it and you're just like, all right, cool, this is great. Come on, man, I want more. Like, there should be more stuff. It's just not. It's not.
It's hard because there is more stuff, more unique stuff. And now, to be fair, there's a lot of quests that are very unique. There's a lot of little small side things. Like, that's where more the character is. Honestly, that's the best part of the game. The smaller things. The actual big
the WoW
things.
was all about too. Breath of the Wild was the same way. Like, it's like, oh, cool, I got a golden horse. You know, like, I don't use horses. I don't care. You know, like, it's like, that's
But that
neat.
was fun.
Yeah, like that thing made no sense. I didn't have to sit there for 30 minutes waiting for the horse to stop moving, you know, and make a whole bunch of potions just to try to, like, you know, bring up my stealth.
There is
it's stuff like that like, you know, it makes the game a little bit better. But overall, I think the meat and potatoes should not be everything else. It should be the main dungeons. The story's good.
Maybe it's maybe how you approach a Zelda game. Everybody has their own different take on what the big things are. Maybe it's just because I have played Zelda since it was, Ocarina was like the game, so everything's kind of compared to that, like the Ocarinas and the Twilights, which have a certain structure to them, a certain expectation. So this is so different, and not that I'm opposed to any of the new things they're adding with the open world, but they have lost those elements that the old games had, which some people might like. I'm a little sad by it. Did you guys say you both did the Gerudo Temple?
I didn't do the Gerudo Temple, but I did the Goron Temple.
You did Goron. Chaz, you did Gerudo.
I did Gerudo. Gerudo was fun. I really enjoyed that whole section. There's a particular part before the dungeon that's pretty fun that takes place in Gerudo Town, which is from the previous game. The thing that happens there is really fun and kind of neat, I thought.
Do you get Crossdresser Link again?
No, you don't.
No,
How you sneak in those a little.
That was so cool, man. Oh yeah, you have to sneak in again, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are fun. At least they put that in perspective. I mean, you did that in the last one anyway.
Yeah. I think we talked a little bit about the Gerudo one last time. I'd mentioned it uses light puzzles to kind of get through.
Yeah. I remember.
I liked that one better than both the water and the Rito one, because by nature those light puzzles force you to have a little bit of progression. Like, you have to do one puzzle so the light shines for the next puzzle, It's not for all of them, like all 4 or 5 things you have to hit, but a couple of them kind of build upon each other. So there was a little bit of progression there, without going into too much detail. So that bumped it up some, but even it was very much just go off in a direction, do a thing, and then do it again for the next things. But some progression at least.
Yeah, I felt that the fire temple had a little bit of progression. Like as I was going through it, there was quite a bit. I had to actually think on where to go, how to do it, go up this way. I even started climbing walls like an idiot trying to get to places. Like that one was interesting. I think, if anything, so far up to this point, I think the fire temple has been my favorite. Not only because of the way you had to get there. Because
that's cool because
that was unexpected.
I'm like literally outside of it. I'm getting ready to like walk in.
Yeah, I think out of the main 4 is probably the best.
Like
now you can break it though, and this is kind of going back to what we talked about, a few weeks ago, how like Ultra Hand and Fuse and all that can kind of trivialize the game. So I'm not going to go into details on how you get through the Fire Temple, but it's very much where you should have to do this first, then this second, this third. It has a very very obvious progression to it, which I think is nice, and I went through the progression, but then I kind of messed around with it towards the end, and I built a hover bike, and that broke everything, because then you just can go anywhere, and then it was just like the other dungeons.
I was just ascending. I was like climbing crap, because if I fall, I did some dumb things. Like I would get on the mine cart, and then I would be like, oh, oops, the rail's broken, fall, and then I would like glide over towards a wall, and I would start climbing, and I'm like, okay, I need to go over there, and I would just jump, and I would gust my way in that. The gust has been the best power in this game so far.
Yeah, it's the most useful.
Hands down, it's the most useful. And I would just be gusting all over the place.
I don't know. I think the
this
one
way, that way, up.
I think the Goron one is something I really wish I would have had much earlier in the game, but
you have the Goron one? You haven't beat the Fire Temple yet. Oh, but you're doing the build up to it.
The build up to it, though. I mean, I'm guessing that's what you're going to end up getting is a ghost form.
Breaking roll.
What part are you in right now? Just out of curiosity.
And
you said you're outside of it, but where you're
I'm
outside
underground.
Of, like...
I'm underground, and
oh, so you're in the depths already?
There's a depths, and then I'm like right in front of me. There's like a mine cart system you can see, and there's a building.
Yeah, he's already there. Yeah. There's like 2 light roots there.
Yeah. Oh, there's like 4. Yeah, there's like a bunch. There's like a bunch there.
Yeah, I didn't realize there were, so I did everything. I did a lot of it in the dark. It was pretty awesome.
That works out because that's literally all I've been doing is doing the light roots first before I went up there.
I don't. I'm dumb. Like I go running around in the dark with my.
You ran by the one that's literally right out the front door. You just skipped it. Well,
no, I literally my last.
It was fun.
My last stream. That's all I did was I did like 3 or 4 of the light roots.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think the Fire Temple is probably the best one out of the main 4. Now, like I mentioned this last time.
Now the boss is different.
I liked. Well,
I mean, it made me think a little bit
of all the others.
Yeah, it made me think a little bit more on how to utilize certain things and like try to beat it. So I guess I mean compared to the water temple, this one hands down is my favorite. Like easily.
I think it's the thing too. Like it's the best one out of those 4,
but it's
compared
still not.
To those 4.
It's compared to those. I'm not.
As soon as you put it up against like a dungeon and boss combo from a prior game, it's like no comparison for most of it. I mean, some of the designs are really cool, and I think the fire one overall is a decent enough battle that I don't think it's terrible by any means, but none of them I think are as good as most of the other battles in just about any other Zelda game.
I agree.
So I did want to ask,
completely agree.
Gamer, have you gotten the Master Sword yet? This is something I did want to talk about.
That's funny that you say that. No.
Okay. Well, because there is like
I have to go into, if I'm not mistaken, I think I might have to go into like the woods or something.
But you don't have to.
I just opened it up. I just opened it up.
I finished the woods. I finished what is it? The forest.
Yeah, the Lost Wood. There's about 3 ways to get the Master Sword. The woods is one route. Doing all the tiers will also give you a route to the sword.
Well, I just got the tier that talked about, her receiving it, which is interesting to me. Giggity.
I really wish you guys had done
I'm
the
there.
tiers. I don't want to spoil any of that, but honestly, if I want to talk about anything, the story is probably one of the best aspects of this game. Like, especially compared to Breath of the Wild, where the story was fine, fairly mid, not a whole lot to it. Yeah, this one there's a lot to it, and honestly, it's got some pretty touching moments.
Well, that's why. That's why I asked him about the Master Sword, because there is a plot element there that, like, I have a feeling is gonna be like I can see it, but I'm like I kind of want to see where they go with that.
Yeah. Knowing me, I'm gonna probably get the tiers anyway, like first before I hit anything else, because I'm so close to getting them all that I just want to get them.
So I would do the tiers and try to get the sword. Like
I've been wanting the sword for a while.
The sword isn't anything special.
No,
it's just like it was in the last game. It won't be a primary weapon. Doesn't change the game for you, but it does when you get it add some story. So
yeah, I feel like every time I help like the Hyrulean like army, I feel sad because it's like, oh, you're supposed to have a sword and you don't have it, and it's like not that there's anything wrong with it. It's like, but I miss my sword. Like
just rub it in.
Yeah, it's like. It kind of tells you, it's like, hey, you should have your sword by now. Like, what are you doing? Like, thanks, I appreciate it. Oh, by the way, speaking of which, how do you guys feel about those raids?
Oh, I like those.
Things?
Those are some of my favorite.
Stronghold things.
Those are some of my favorite things to do. They're fun. They're real simplistic, but they're fun.
They're just fine. Like,
I hate them. I die so much because of stupid crap. Like, you get one like blue moblin that comes out of nowhere and just like bashes you and the donkey punches you in the back of the head and you're dead.
There was one that was
just saved too many bombs, so it's pretty straightforward.
There was one that was pretty difficult for me. There was one on a ship.
Now I'm gonna.
There's like a ship one that's like right on a like you have to like fix a bridge in order to get your people across the ship.
It's by one of the stables.
That one was kind of difficult. That took me a little bit.
Yeah, I kept every time I run into those things, I'm like, I guess I could help him. You know, it's like, oh, but now I got the Goron thing. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna utilize that guy. You know, because he could just blow up everything.
I'm starting though. Like I remember I said it on the last episode, but like, I'm very annoyed because like, I don't have ADD or whatever. Maybe sometimes I do when it comes to video games, but I feel like nothing else I do. Like, I get so drawn into doing all this little stuff that I'm getting so annoyed by. Like, I don't want to do the Korok stuff anymore. I don't want to keep helping the guy with his sign, but it's like I can't help doing it.
I give that up.
I just like I wish
I could
just
make a conscious decision.
Yeah.
That's what I did. Like, I mean, I'm not saying you have to play the game in a particular way. The way I kind of did after I kind of putzed around for a little bit and did the first dungeon, my goal was just get around the map, do all the towers, that way I had a feel for everything. And I think by doing that, it made me less concerned about the little things, like finding all the Koroks, doing whatever, because then I had, like, an easy way to access all the big stuff in the game. So I just started going for that stuff. I'd do little things along the way, but I don't think they even designed the game for you to do this. They don't want you to collect every Korok seed. I mean, they're just there for something to do along the way. So I would never feel bad about just saying, screw that little Korok. He's never going to see his friend again. Just keep on going.
I know when you finish helping the guy with his signs, he's not going to he'll give you the same 3 things.
And that's the thing, you realize the rewards just really aren't worth it after. Like, eventually, you open up enough weapon slots and, you know, bow slots that you don't really need more Korok seeds. You can get them. It's not going to hurt you, but it's also not necessary. I feel like I did too much after a while, and I was way too overpowered by the time I got to the end of the game. I'm like, well, now there's even less of a challenge. It's a little more boring because I have too many weapons. I have too many of these. So you really almost don't want to do too much, at least before moving on to the next big thing in the game. In other words, I think it's going to make it too easy.
I feel like I might start doing it. I might now just because I've been running off. I've been running off and doing everything that like. Now I feel like I might want to start beelining it, like you said, to like all the tiers and the dungeons and stuff.
That's kind of what I've been doing.
It's not like the scenarios change, too. Like, you've probably done at least one of every type of Korok seed challenge there is. So doing another 30, 40, 100 of them...
I turned in, like, probably 60 Korok seeds at this point. I've done a lot.
Yeah.
Well,
I think, you know...
There's like 1,000 of them. So.
Sheesh.
Yeah, really. I feel like the reward system in general sucks. Like every
Because
dungeon,
everything is disposable.
it's like, oh, it's so bad. Like even the ores, the embers,
Well,
the you know, the
well, that's-
sapphires.
well,
Like
that's
when
gonna
you need
be-
money, that's like the only thing you can do with them anyway.
Well-
It's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna take them and just kind of sell them off because I need gore on armor.
I mean,
Well,
you
that's-
can fuse
you know-
them to stuff, but like the rubies, you know, basically bombs if you fuse them to things. But then you're
Yeah,
balancing,
but
okay,
man.
what's worth more, the money versus the utility of it. But yeah, because everything is consumable,
Mhm.
it all
You
feels
might as well just
very.
sell it.
It's all volatile, right? Because nothing's really gonna serve you well long term. Might as well get whatever use you can out of it now and move on. That's probably what they want you to do in the game. But I do kind of miss like you get this one special weapon, you get this one special thing, and that you can like upgrade it and build it over the course of the game. Like the only thing that comes close to that is the armor. And honestly, that is one of my favorite things is to find new armor pieces.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cool stuff. You can get Midna's mask, Majora's mask. You can get the whole fierce deity outfit. So that kind of stuff is really cool. But the weapons and whatnot and the other kind of consumable items, meh.
Yeah,
And
this is
rupees
kinda
after a certain
worthless.
point don't mean a whole lot to you either. So
Well, I mean, what after you get what you need for the dungeons, that's pretty much it. Like,
Mm.
you just
If
find
you
more
even need
arrows
'em.
after that.
yeah, that's the only thing I've been using it for. It's just buying arrows because I keep running out of arrows like a jerk.
And that
I don't know
reminds
how
me.
many arrows I went through.
Another thing, gamer, you haven't done the forest yet. Anything that has to do with that?
I just opened it up today. I actually spent a lot of time this
Okay.
morning playing
I won't
it.
ruin it. There's a cool.
So,
there's a
I
cool.
finally, I'm gonna go through it.
Yeah.
It's just I saw how big it was, and I'm like, giggity. And then I'm like, let me just. I went to the depths first because I accidentally went into the depths from Elden Mountains. Like I went from, I got one of the towers in the middle, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I just like kind of bounced, and I was like, what's that? And then I stepped on a stone, and the stone broke down and it fell.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh crap! And it was a scribe, and I realized, oh man, that's kind of necessary. So I fell with it, and I just kind of went down.
I
So
will say I had.
didn't-
Oh, sorry. I had to look up spoilers for how to start the forest thing because I was very confused. I don't want to ruin
Oh,
it.
like how to get into
How
the
to-
forest?
Yeah, I was like trying to figure out
Oh.
what to do, and of course, the one thing
That's the fun part.
man,
I don't know, I like figuring that out. Like, I'll do whatever I can to try to crawl my way through anything to try to get
because
it.
it's like in Breath of the Wild, the forest did the same thing, but you could approach it normally. You just had to figure out how. But this one, it's like
Yeah, this game, it forces you to go a different route than you would think you have to based on the last game.
But the forest has a cool
Good to know.
conclusion, so you'll have fun with that, I think.
I'll do that at some point. I just want to get the rest of those tiers.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's
Wanna get
anything
those-
else we haven't talked about. We talked about the dungeons. We talked about the labyrinths a little bit. There is another dungeon after you finish the main 4. I won't go into specifics there. That one, I think is pretty good. But you guys will see when
I
you
do
get
want to
there.
go to the plateau as well and see what.
Yeah, you should check out the Great Plateau. There's some fun stuff there.
I'm assuming there's maybe some callbacks to the previous game, seeing as how that's where you start off.
Yeah, there's some stuff that happens with the depths there you want to kind of check out without
I see.
going too far. But yeah, I would check out the Great Plateau and what's underneath it.
I was kind of
There's
bummed
anything
in the
else I think-
depths when I got to the very north part, and there's a big giant statue of a thing, and I climbed all the way to the top of it, and there was nothing. That was kind of.
Yeah.
The
I-
depths, just like with anything else, it feels a little barren after a while. Like
There's a
once you've
big
kinda
giant
seen what it has to
statue of a
offer.
creature, and I climbed up, and you get to the top, and I'm like,
There was nothing to it.
nothing. I was like,
Yeah.
really?
There's no Koroks. I
find-
mean, that's the one thing, you know. Like, you would think that they would put the Koroks down there too.
Oh,
Like,
I feel
at
that'd
least,
be
like-
too much.
No,
Trying
I'm
to
saying
find
like
those
you'd
little
think they would,
little jerks in the dark.
yeah, why not? You see little stupid things that they float
Sparkles.
around.
Yeah.
Those stupid sparkle leaves.
I do like all the parallels that the depths has with the top. Like not only like the topography inverted, but where there's a light route, there's typically a shrine somewhere close by on the main level, and like where there's like a spring, there's usually like a fairy thing above it. So like I think the way they kind of set up and laid out the depths is pretty cool. But I don't know. Once you've kind of run through most of it, it feels a little barren too.
Do you completely clear out the entire depths when you're done? Because now I'm just like, do I want to finish everything in the depths?
You don't.
You don't?
I mean, when we say clear it out, what do you mean?
Do you get rid of all the creatures and the gunk and everything?
Well, you can't get rid of all the creatures because of the blood.
No
matter how many enemies you kill, they always come back. Now, you can get rid of most of the darkness. If you do every light route, it lights up everything. But you don't really need to. The game doesn't really reward you for doing so. I mean, the big thing in the depths, there is a... what's the Yiga master name? Master Koga? What is it? No.
Koga.
Is it Koga? Okay. So his whole quest line's underneath there. So that's probably the biggest thing to do in the depths. And then special armor pieces. I think most of them are down there. Beyond that, there's not a whole lot really of need to go into the depths for.
Why wasn't there a depths in the previous game?
Why wasn't there?
Yeah.
Because they hadn't thought of it yet. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't think about it. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I'm sure it took a huge
Or I guess they would argue
develop.
it's a different timeline, so it's just like, oh, it's different.
No, I don't think it's that.
It's going afterwards.
I mean, I think that's more of a development thing. Like, you gotta think, they had to develop the whole mainland Hyrule. That was their first big goal. That was probably a huge undertaking. That probably took them 5, 6, 7 years. When they did Tears of the Kingdom, that was already done. They just had to tweak it up, so they had a lot more time to create this underground. I think you're thinking from like a lore canonical kind of side, like why it wasn't there.
I'm being annoying.
I doubt they thought of it, to be honest, or they just didn't think they could develop it successfully in time. So, I don't know.
I think
that's fine.
I mean, they look like they spent a ridiculous amount of time in those depths. Like, no joke. Like, there's a lot going on. I mean, you would think that doesn't seem,
There's a lot going on.
Exactly like Hyrule, but it's not. There's a lot of highs and lows. There's a lot of rocks. They placed everything everywhere. Like, there's root systems that go all over the place. Like, and you can't get past a certain area. I've ran into an obelisk, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And then I realized you can ascend to the freaking top of the mountain. And I was like, "Hey!" I was like, "There's a way out of here." Like, if I really wanted to do it, I can find a way out. And I found it. I was like, that's awesome. Like, at least that, like,
there's a lot in the depths, but there's also not a lot in the depths. And
I was just going to say that. There's a lot there, but there's not a lot.
Yeah. They constructed it in a way that makes sense.
It's a huge place. They spent a lot. You can tell a lot of time went into making sure certain things are placed the correct way and the topography was done up. Like, I don't want to say there's not a lot, meaning that a lot of development time didn't get put into it, because obviously it did. But when you look at it objectively for how many different things you can actually do in the area, there's not that many, right? The depths, you've got the Yiga holdouts, you've got some mines,
the fire temple,
the temple, light routes, and some like little chests and stuff. Like, there's probably some other hidden stuff in there too, some one-off things, but
it seems like it was more for Yeah, there's a lot of the boss battles like Style Noxus and stuff down there, which is I haven't fought it.
You probably, I don't know, well, maybe you haven't seen it yet. All the old boss you fight up in the dungeons, you can fight them all again underneath in the depths. So you can go back between all of them again, multiple times in multiple places, which is kind of cool. Also makes them feel a little less unique after a while, but
I did notice
they're
also
also corrupted, right?
Huh?
They're also corrupted.
Yeah.
I mean, I did notice the dragons go down there too, like the ones you just see floating around.
I shot one earlier. I saw a fire one, and I shot him, and he gave me a nice fire scale. It's like,
you can use them for upgrade stuff for some of your armor.
There's also, I thought was kind of fun, there was down in the depths near the fire temple, there was a Colosseum that was kind of fun to do.
That's right. There's quite a few of those, actually, and usually they all give you a special armor piece if you complete them.
There was one that had like a line of bananas leading into it. That was kind of fun.
You
got a bunch of bananas out of that one. Well, shoot, man.
Anything else? I eventually want to talk about the end game, like the final Ganon battle. But
next episode, I will definitely
we can wait on that.
Yeah, next episode, I'll definitely prioritize all that.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely beeline it. I'm not far. I just spend so much time doing other stuff.
And it doesn't take you long to kind of beeline to the end, but you got to really focus on knocking that last stuff out.
And I'll be honest,
I'll go
Like I want to get there just for the next episode, anyways. But honestly, I feel like I don't know. I feel like I've done enough with Zelda. Like where I'm at the point where I'm like, all right, I just want to kind of move on anyway. Especially with Final Fantasy around the corner.
Yeah, I will say.
I'm wondering.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm wondering how their DLC is gonna be.
Oh, for Zelda.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
I'll tell you, if it's anything like the last DLC, the champion stuff, I'll probably skip it. Because here's the thing, and I mentioned this, I think off stream. This is one of those games, like with the last game, is once you beat Ganon, because there's no post anything in the game. Like, you don't get to play after the end credits. It just brings you back to right before the final battle. Once you beat Ganon, you beat the game. And for me, now it's really hard to say go back and clean up side quests and stuff. And people are different about that. They're not going to feel the same way, but I'm far less inclined that knowing I don't need any, like, extra resources or anything else to get to the end challenge because I've already beaten it. So any DLC they add, I'd have the same kind of issue with it because I've already beaten the game. It's not adding to my progression. That's just a thing for me. People are very different about how they like their DLC, but for me, I very much am one who likes DLC like that as post-game kind of stuff. I like there to be some post-game where, and even in this game they could have. Like, I hope that's not spoiling anything, but you could continue the game after, the whole Ganon battle and everything's done there, and give you a chance to wrap up side quests. I think that would have been a nice way to kind of keep some momentum going in the game when you finish things up, but they don't go that route. Spoiler.
I was actually hoping for something like that in the last game, to be honest, because I was expecting it when I beat Ganon. I was like, all right, cool. So I got a little star next to my name. So I was going to ask you, did it give you stupid star again? And it's like, oh, you completed a good job. High five.
Yep.
And it's like
a checkpoint right before, and that's it.
So
man, I hate the fact that they did that.
So I don't know.
Like I like post game stuff.
Yeah, I think their probably thing is they probably don't want you to do everything in one playthrough. They want you to now feel like, oh, I should go start a new playthrough and experience the game differently, and that's probably the way they wanted you to play this game. Less spend 100 hours in one playthrough, play the game for 50 hours, get a certain experience, and then X amount of months play it again with a different experience because you'll find other stuff you didn't find the first time. That was probably their game design kind of objective. That's just not how I like to play games. A lot of games nowadays I don't get a chance to play through multiple times. I get one good playthrough, and I'll cram as much into that one playthrough as possible, and then when I'm done, I'm probably done, unless I come back like 5, 6, 7 years. Like, I never replayed Breath of the Wild. I did it one time, and I was satisfied with it for 7 years, so.
Yeah. I did just want to bring up real quick something while it struck me. On our previous Part 2 conversation that we had to talk about, it looks like 3D versus 2D Zelda games. And then just someone in the comments, Steph Tendo said, great podcast, they should keep the 3D Zelda games to open world and the 2D ones more linear. So I guess just kind of branching off of that, I did want to real quick just ask, seeing as how this game is out, would you like to see them go in the direction of maybe remaking another Zelda game, or would you like something like a new 2D type Zelda game? Like, I don't know. I just thought that would be interesting.
I enjoy their 2D games. They need to keep that. If they mess with that too, I'm gonna be mad. Like,
do you think it's time they do like a Link Between Worlds? Not that exact, but like, that type.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're fantastic games. They need to keep that line. Like, again, if they mess with that and then change the structure of it, oh man. Because
A Link Between Worlds has been a while now, right? That's got to be... Gosh, is that like a 10-year-old game at this point?
That's like what, 6, 7 years now?
I don't know if it's quite 10. It was a few years for Breath of the Wild, so it's probably getting close, but say 8.
Yeah.
I hope they don't change too much about the 2D formula. The thing I liked about Link Between Worlds is they kind of made it open. I feel like if that was one, you could get your item in any order, mostly any order, and go around.
Yeah, because you had Robbie.
So you want to know when it came out?
You had to buy your items. Or borrow your items until...
Yeah.
So A Link Between...
That was a nice way. Here's what I think... I'm sorry, Chaz. I know I'm probably messing with you. You were give us the date?
Yeah. I was just going to say it came out November 2013. So we're approaching 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Doesn't feel like it.
Dang.
I guess what I was going to say is I feel like that was an example of how they can still make the whole game you can go in any direction, super accessible, but I don't feel like any one dungeon felt cookie cutter, right? They all felt unique. They all still had special items you had to have, but you got to choose which way you tackled them. I know there's still some core differences between how this game works versus Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, etc., but I liked that because all the dungeons still felt unique. The boss battle still felt unique. I didn't feel like I was doing the same thing in each dungeon, and I feel like they could still do that in a 3D way. Based upon that comment, and I appreciate that someone gave a comment, thank you so much. But I don't necessarily think every 3D game should go open world. And it's not that I'm opposed to open world as a Zelda component. I do feel like sometimes this game almost feels too big for what it is, but I don't feel like the open world is the biggest problem with Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. The way they've structured dungeons and those unique encounters inside of those, like, that's what's gotten lost. And they could have done more there to make it feel more traditional. So they could go open world for the 3D, but I really want to at least see the dungeons come back in like true form. But I'd be okay if they also pulled back a lot on the open world. Not saying go linear, like go back to like Twilight Princess kind of thing. We had like a good little hub area with a Hyrule, could go off in a bunch of areas, but no, that's my
They should, Nintendo
I
should
think
be...
what makes Zelda... I'm sorry, Chaz.
No, I was just going to say, Nintendo should be really annoying and just make a dungeon-only Zelda game, where there is no other aspect of the game. It's just dungeons.
I don't know,
Some
man.
people would love it.
I'm kidding. They should.
And some Zelda games are more like that too.
Really?
They're really just dungeon focused.
Sorry,
I
gamer.
don't know if any are quite like that, but even when I think about like Skyward Sword, like the dungeons are what I remember about that game. Like the actual levels getting there, and this is where people get so mad at Skyward Sword. They are super linear. Not that there aren't things happening in the little mini hub worlds you go between, but those were never the highlights for me. It was always the overarching story and those dungeons. Like I love the dungeons in Skyward Sword. So some people would love like an all dungeon like Zelda, but I don't know. I still feel like there is a better balance between there. This is not my perfect Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. I know people are already claiming this is their best game, favorite game of all time kind of thing, and more power to them. I still miss some traditional Zelda elements. So,
We're sorry, gamer. I interrupted your thought before.
I forgot what I was about to say.
Oh, great.
sorry.
But I can. It's all good. No, but I think for 3D Zelda games, I don't mind the open world aspect. It's just what makes a Zelda game is those elements in particular that you're saying, Phoenix, and that's what makes it a Zelda game for me, in my opinion. And that's what always draws me back to like Majora's Mask or Twilight Princess. You know, those games were so good, and even Wind Waker. Wind Waker was really good, and in the way that was, I for lack of a better term, that was kind of open because you had to do all kinds of stuff. You do whatever you want. You can go find Triforce pieces, and it's like, yeah, that was the tedious part of the game. But then once you get them, you're like, the reward is there. You're like, yes, let's do this. Like, you get to go fight Ganon. You get to do whatever you want. It's like that in a more grander scale would be great. I mean,
somewhere in between.
Yeah, like I'd be okay with another one of those. I'd be like, you know what? If you guys went back in that direction, I'd be okay with it. You know, but I know they took that and made it 2D. So
That's something I fear too a little bit, because Nintendo, to my knowledge, has already come up and said that Breath of the Wild is the framework moving forward for a while. So whatever the third game is going to be built upon that. Now, I'm curious if it's going to be like a straight up, like another sequel to Breath of the Wild, like same style, same Link, same everything.
Well, that's why I brought up the
like that's
2D question, because like that's why I was like, would you guys want to see a 2D game not attached to this franchise? You know, I mean, I don't know.
I'd like to see something different than what they're doing right now. Like, if they put out a third Breath of the Wild, essentially, the problem is, like, all three of these games, like, they don't have their own, I don't want to say personality, but their own kind of signature to them, right? Like, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom share so much DNA that most people are just going to kind of group them together, or they're just going to say Tears of the Kingdom is the best one, right? And forget all about Breath of the Wild, because most of what makes Breath of the Wild is already in Tears of the Kingdom. So if they do a third game, is that just going to happen again? And then those two games just get sucked up into the third game as far as kind of like the cohesive, I don't know. I like to look at each Zelda game individual. Like, I remember things from this game because of this, and because of this game because of this. And at a certain point, if all these games, like a third one or a fourth one, however many, all just are the same, I'm going to have a hard time picking them apart Like, I'm already having a few issues trying to remember what I did versus Breath of the Wild versus Tears of the Kingdom versus Breath of the Wild 3 versus whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't like that feeling they're all just kind of hodgepodge together.
Well, I actually think my opinion on this game, not even compared to old Zelda games, compared to just even Breath of the Wild, I feel like I'm starting to have a more favorable outlook on Breath of the Wild versus this one, simply because of many of, like, I mean, we mentioned it, but a lot of the repetitive aspects of this game, I don't know, I felt like, looking back on Breath of the Wild, at least, like, that game felt less repetitive. I don't know. And maybe that, to me...
it was the first time you had done most of that stuff. Like, just because you do a lot of what you did in Breath of the Wild, again, in Tears of the Kingdom. So it's already coming in as kind of a tired gameplay, component.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've been talking too much. You guys go ahead.
I was gonna say, the one thing I guess is like I don't feel so bad wasting weapons away. You know, like in Breath of the Wild, like you waste a weapon, you're like, damn man, like crap, I just got rid of this broadsword. You know, it's like, oh, it was a good sword. I gotta hold on to it until whenever. This one, I just don't care. This one, I just like destroy it. I think the one thing I held on to was,
but isn't that a good thing?
An ice staff.
Isn't that all?
It's because I used it to freeze.
Like
I use it to freeze things, or just enemies from trying to slaughter me. This little bink, and it's like done. It's like sweet. Let me just wreck them really quick, you know.
But I was just gonna say, like you, so you view that as a negative, where I would say that almost might be a positive in terms of the actual gameplay, because it puts more of an emphasis on you being more careful and being more choosy with your weapons versus like Tears of the Kingdom, where you can just replicate whatever you had pretty easily. Like, I don't know, I guess it just depends on the viewpoint.
Fuse, at least.
Yeah.
Like if you have Fuse,
in Breath of the Wild too. Like most of those weapons that you thought were so special, you could always find another one relatively easy. I think it's because we were so trained not to give up your powerful weapons from prior Zelda games. You just wanted to hold on to it. But I think their whole design paradigm has always been use it, lose it, and move on to something new, right? Because there's always another weapon around the corner. And with Fuse, that just kind of, adds to that, flexibility for the weapon construction. So, I mean, I think that is a good thing to just kind of accept that durability is a thing, your weapon's not going to last, move on to the next thing, because there always is going to be a next thing.
Mm-hmm. Like, right now, I don't think I have any swords. So I'm like, oh, man, I have so many, like, sticks with rocks on them. And it's funny to me because I use them to, like, mine. That's all I use it for. I just use it to, like, mine ore. And it's like, sometimes I forget I have it, and I'm using that in order to, fight an enemy, and it still hurts them. And I'm like, well, whatever works, I suppose. I could just get another stick and just make that into an ore miner, like an axe, an ore axe. It's just, it's so silly. It's so silly.
And I'm still not sold on the Fuse system or the Ultra Hand. Like, I mean, Chaz, I think you were saying that you kind of favor Breath of the Wild for various reasons. And if I was going to favor Breath of the Wild for anything, because it doesn't have Ultra Hand or Fuse, it feels a little more limited in your abilities. But overall, I do think Tears of the Kingdom is probably the better game, mostly. Like, there are more improvements in it, I think, than, drawbacks. That's the right word.
Well,
it's cleaner, like the a lot of it's cleaner. Hand, like, controls in general feel fantastic.
Well,
I'm not saying,
to be honest. Honestly, I find the controls kind of clunky. How you select
your
powers, how do you choose your weapon? Like, when I'm scrolling to like attach an item to my bow, I hate having to scroll forever to find the item. Like,
yeah, I did run into that a lot.
I don't like where the jump button is. I know you can move it, but that messes up your I think the controls are kind of wonky, to be honest. Like, I got used to them. They're the same as it was in Breath of the Wild, but I don't think they're good controls. They're serviceable at best.
So
that's a good point. I completely forgot about that.
So can I just, I don't know, kind of...
No.
No, you cannot talk.
Can I put
You're going to sit in the back while we just talk.
I just want to say, like, I will hold to that opinion that gameplay-wise and the open world and all that, I think I'm starting to favor Breath of the Wild. But I will say where I think Tears of the Kingdom is probably going to pull out is probably the narrative. Like, I do feel like it is awesome anytime you unlock a new memory and all sorts of stuff like that. So that, and I feel like in
it's
Breath of the
more
Wild,
accessible too.
Breath of the Wild, I feel like that's where that game was lacking, was more the narrative.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that you had to find a picture.
Yeah.
Like my biggest problem with Breath of the Wild is that damn picture. Like you find a picture, you got like, I have to look at that exact spot. Where the hell is that in this massive world? Are you serious right now?
Yeah,
Like that was my issue.
The memories weren't as
they weren't that good.
poignant. Like they were. No, I won't say they weren't good. Seriously, I like subtle storytelling. So I mean, I liked the small moments that Link and Zelda would have to give their backstory. Nothing bad about that, but the whole adventures didn't feel real grandiose, and the narrative or the memories didn't add a lot of context there. Like you knew the story without any of those memories, right? There was no like little story beats you were missing out on. If you don't do the tiers and Tears of the Kingdom, you're missing out on some major story components. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So they're just much richer. There's a lot more narrative given there. So yes, the story head and shoulders is better in Tears of the Kingdom, and that will probably be what edges it out for me. I do think the ending's better without going into too much detail. And I guess I'll say the quote-unquote dungeons are better than Divine Beasts. I'm not 100% on that yet, but based upon like a couple of the extra dungeons you guys will get to, I guess I'm fairly safe in saying that I think Tears of the Kingdom is the better game. But I think my biggest issue is that the mechanics that a lot of people are loving right now for the sandbox aspect, the fuse and the ultra hand, I feel like mess with the core Zelda-ness of the game. Like they make it too flexible. It's too easy to cheese dungeons now. It's too easy to cheese combat encounters. It's actually too easy to explore when you start fusing and ultra handing crazy vehicles and whatnot. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. Like I made a couple of mechs and kind of took down a stronghold or two, and that was neat. But just the idea of doing that, and once you realize how effective some of these things are, it trivializes the game. I'll tell you, I was exploring the depths pretty much on foot for the longest time, and like that was exciting because I was taking it one chunk at a time. And then I realized how to create the hover bike, and I put the giant, the bright shard light headlight on the front, and I just zoomed around the entire depths, got all the light routes. I was done in a few hours. Like, it trivialized the game for me. So I think that's the biggest issue for you to, I think, at least for me, to really enjoy Tears of the Kingdom like a more authentic Zelda game. I've got to really restrict myself on how I play it. Not use Ultra Hand much, not use Fuse certain ways, and play it as traditional as possible, which I don't know if I love that concept. I don't know.
You're nerfing yourself at that point. It's like, the game is already offering you.
Yeah, I'm typically one for, I like to use whatever the game has. It's a gameplay mechanic, right? I should be able to use it. To think that I need to restrict myself from using it to enjoy the game more just rubs me wrong a little bit, but I don't know.
I mean, you can always do hard mode.
Yeah, but
I mean,
that's not going to make it hard in the right way. Honestly, if I do hard mode, what that's going to make me want to do is really double down on Ultra Hand and stuff, because that's going to be the most effective way to get through stuff, right? Build the crazy contraptions so you can get through a stronghold more efficiently, or at least more consistently. I don't know, but those are kind of self-imposed limitations you'd have to give yourself. Some people will love it though. Like they want Zelda to be a big sandbox game. I kind of wish that could have been something else. Like some other IP was their big sandbox. I feel like now, because people have fallen in love with the sandbox so much, Zelda is just kind of stuck with it. And that's gonna be what they carry forth for a while.
That's where they should have
like pigeonholed.
That's where they should have gone with Pokemon.
Use all your Pokemon again.
Yeah.
What? They're gonna put Pokemon in a Zelda game now?
No, I feel like they should have messed with Pokemon Sandbox a bit more, and I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Arceus. You want to talk about Arceus for an hour and a half? I'm all for that.
No.
Oh man. Oh no.
We should. We did a retrospective on Breath of the Wild. Maybe we should on Arceus eventually.
Maybe one day. But
alrighty. Oh, I feel like we hit on everything, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll have to have one more talk when you guys have beat the game to kind of final thoughts and final opinions. Yeah. But I think we've covered the scope of what this game is really offering, the gameplay, and just to bring it back, and I know I've said this disclaimer a few times, the game is good. This is not a bad game. I'm not going to argue anybody who says this is a 10 out of 10, a masterpiece, because the craftsmanship that's gone into this game is superb, right? This is an excellent game. People are loving it. That's fantastic. As far as this being your favorite Zelda game is going to vary on what your preferences are. For me, this is not it. Not that I don't like this game, But I can certainly, if I'm trying to judge it as a Zelda game, I've got a lot of critiques. If it wasn't a Zelda game, honestly, I might feel completely different about this whole thing. If this was a different IP on top of it, some brand new franchise, I may not have any critiques because I'll have nothing that I need to really compare it to. I probably would have been happy with what the dungeons offered, but putting that Zelda label is going to automatically make me compare it to every other Zelda game that came before, which is a pretty big lineage to be compared to. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's it's got to live up to those CDI games.
Oh yeah, Lawn of Gamelon or whatever it was.
Yeah, buddy.
Those are the.
No, I agree. I think it's a fun game for what it is. Like I enjoy it. I mean, obviously, if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be putting so much hours in. I'm already looking forward to going back in there and seeing what the hell I'm gonna do with that. What the hell is it called? A Greelock or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta figure that guy out. So whatever, you know.
Key
but
eyeball.
overall,
That's
it's
cute.
key eyeball's the key. All right, cool. Good to know. I got a bunch of those I'm not using for anything anyway. I wonder if I still have arrows. Oops.
I want some of those.
Yeah, that's the one thing you can't freaking forge an arrow. That would have been it right there. That
I
would
wish
have
there
been
was
really
another
easy.
way to get the arrows. The only way that I know of is shops, which I mean gives me something to
That's
spend
it.
rupees on, but that's
Yeah.
it.
That or fighting
Or
freaking
chests and like boxes you can find them in.
yeah, and fighting constructs and just use a wooden
I guess
thing and
that's
just
true.
collect them and just keep
Yeah, you can
collecting
find
them. That's like the only other way. It's like, oh well, at least the money's good for something. So, whatever. I'll keep collecting ore and just getting more money and buying a whole boatload of arrows. Maybe I'll see Beetle again.
Oh, he's
You
all
know?
over the place, man.
Yeah.
Beetle's
He's my
always
homie.
fun.
Too bad you don't you see him, but it's not like
only
in
see him in the
like
stables.
Wind Waker.
The stables. The
Yeah,
only place
not
you
like
see
Wind
him.
Waker where he's like miraculously in an area and you're like, hey, look, it's Beetle. I want to go visit him really quick.
Mm.
Like, he was the only shop. It's like, hey, I want to go
Was,
see you. Hi.
He does try to buy your fancy bugs though if you find some. Like
Oh, is that
I
right?
picked up some fancy beetle and he saw it and was like, "Oh, I need some of that." So
Oh
that was-
man, not
And,
again.
And Skyward Sword, wasn't he like flying a shop around and you had to like
Yeah, he
find
was
a
in
way
the
to
flying
get to
shop.
him? Yeah, interesting.
Oh yeah. That big
Uh,
label, wasn't it? Did it have like his big face on it?
No.
No?
Might have. I can't.
I
I
don't
don't
Yeah,
remember.
I don't remember.
It was pedaling it, and then yeah.
No.
Now we're getting off topic. Kind of.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna wrap us up there. So I'm kind of glad we decided to do this. We went on much longer on Zelda than I thought we would have. So at least next episode or tomorrow episode we can actually.
We had a lot to say.
We had a lot to say. Hopefully we don't talk about Diablo for this long. At least I know I won't.
I mean, I've been playing, but you know, long story short, I'm still only like 20 something.
That's what I'm.
So
that's what I
still
am.
I still got a long way to go.
I'm like level
I'm
20.
nowhere near that.
Yeah.
I played a little.
No.
But
Well,
All
that's
right,
a
that's
topic for a different.
Yeah, guys, I think it's fair to say hopefully episode 4 is our next full, end of our Zelda talk, I feel like, because I'm definitely going to make sure I knock out the story and all the tiers by then.
Yeah, I'll definitely do it by then too.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then
show.
tomorrow we'll get to talk, I'll bring up, what was a game that got announced? What was it? Dungeons of Hinterberg? That looked like a
yeah,
like a
that looks pretty
Zelda-like.
good.
We'll talk about that
And
tomorrow.
maybe that's the all dungeons game, all dungeon Zelda.
I thought I would bring it up because it even
What?
has dungeons in the name and it like everything
Yeah.
looks dungeony or Zelda in that one.
Yeah,
And
that
then
looked
before
good.
you
That
know
looked
it, before you know it, it's because it's a Souls-like game.
No, it's like a Zelda DMC game. It's like hack and
Yeah,
slash.
and
Yeah,
And then it's Souls-like at the end, really hard for no reason.
no, well,
And
could
then,
be.
And then Chaz is gonna be like, I hate this game forever. I'm just gonna play one dungeon and call it a day.
I thought about playing that demo for what was it, Liza P. They used the demo, and I'm like, do I want to stream the demo? I'm like, could I get past the demo? I don't know. I thought it was
Do it.
No, I got too much to play right now. All right, guys. Well, I think we're gonna end it out there. On screen, we have some audio locations if you'd like to check us out there, and then of course in the socials and down in the comments. We'd love to hear anything you got. So, you guys got anything to say before we head on out and come back tomorrow?
Nope, I'm good. Got to rest up for our 4-hour conversation tomorrow. So.
No.
Hey, I'm gonna go play some Zelda.
You gotta cover 10 video game events.
Oh
It's
man,
been a busy week.
Yeah, it has.
No. All right, guys. Well, we
Sounds
love
good,
you. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I don't know. We'll see you guys on the next one. Adios, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
And don't cut it, Chaz.
Yeah.